evening, everyone. Such an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce our reader for tonight. And what a fitting guest of honor we have for you to culminate this week of wonders. I feel that anyone who is serious about reading or writing poetry in America today would know the name Aimee Nezhukumatathil. In the last 2 decades, Aimee has published 4 award-winning poetry books and garnered the highest literary recognition, including the Pushcart Prize, the NEA Fellowship, Richard Hugo Prize, the Boatwright Prize. The list goes on and on. Her most recent book, World of Wonders, which I have right here, is an illustrated book of nature essays in praise of fireflies, whale sharks, and other astonishments. It debuted at number 5 on the New York Times bestseller list and stayed on the charts for 8 weeks. But many of you may know Aimee as the dynamic poetry teacher and speaker that she is. Beloved by high school students and college students alike, and by readers of all ages, really. Aimee has brought her passion for poetry across the country and the globe. Many of you may have been lucky enough to even take a workshop from Aimee during her previous visits as faculty at this festival. I first heard Aimee's name in 2003. I had returned to Manila to visit my family and to attend a poetry conference at my alma mater. During the conference, a Filipino poet mentor pushed a thick brown envelope into my hands. Now, you have to know, this was in the golden age before the internet, the Xerox age, as some poets alluded to earlier during the Beloved Poems panel. And my poetry mentor, in his wisdom, had photocopied for me, cover to cover, Aimee's first book, Miracle Fruit, which had just won the Tupelo Prize and had been honored with a Global Filipino Literary Award. I was just beginning to write poetry then and had published maybe less than a handful of poems in small journals. None of the poets I'd read or heard as a young mother learning to write poetry in suburban America looked even remotely like me. Yet here was a young woman of South Indian and Filipino descent who shared my Filipino roots, who drew from her Asian heritage to write this prize-winning, globally acclaimed collection. Miracle Fruit begins with a poem, One Bite. The poem opens, Miracle Fruit changes the tongue. One bite, and for hours, all you eat is sweet. Placed alone on a saucer, it quivers like it's cold from the ceramic, even in this heat. I had taken a bite of Miracle Fruit and was forever changed. I couldn't get enough. Fortunately for me and for all of us, Aimee has gone on to write several poetry books since then, At the Drive-In Volcano, Lucky Fish, and her latest poetry collection, Oceanic. But reading her first book 18 years ago, I learned that first, most important lesson. My stories mattered. The scent of frying garlic in Mom's adobo, that song Dad played on his violin, those tart sweet berries growing in my Lola's backyard, whose name I couldn't remember, they mattered. Our stories, your stories matter. Such is Aimee's poetic superpower, the ability to notice, to single out what matters. In doing so, she teaches us to see the world with new eyes. Whether she reimagines leaping dolphins as commas that make us pause and reflect, or recalls a first anniversary spent in a jungle of swinging monkeys, or shares life lessons she learned from the Incredible Hulk, what Aimee gives us is a window. That 1-inch frame so we can notice things and be astonished. Whether speaking of love or loss, motherhood or motherland, Aimee's poems lead us to that place of wonder, a place where things look new again, where we are jolted alive and we are never the same. One bite, and if you eat it whole, it softens and swells like a mouthful of mallow. So tonight, I invite you to partake of this movable feast, a lush, whimsical, large-hearted, deeply sensorial, wise, humorous, attentive, and life-affirming world of wonders. I invite you to lean in and be filled with the sweetness of being alive. My friends, please give your warmest welcome to Aimee Nezhukumatathil.
Oh my goodness, Angela, I'm so glad that I wore waterproof mascara. That is such a beautiful introduction. Thank you all so much here. I wish we could be all together in Palm Beach, and to all the organizers of the Palm Beach Poetry Festival. I know it is a finely oiled machine there. And Miles Kuhn, I'm so glad to join you all for the third time. Hopefully next time we meet, it'll be under palm trees and warm ocean breezes as well. Thank you so much. Angela, you have really got me choked up as well. Thank you. That is a very, very meaningful way to start this evening, the Saturday evening here. So I have a couple videos to show you, very short, but I'm so happy to be closing out this tremendous week. I know I always feel so enriched at the end of the Palm Beach Poetry Festival. And I hope you all are coming away with lots of prompts and lots of new ways of looking at poems, and just giving yourself some time to daydream in between as well. All right, I'm going to start out with a poem. It's almost Valentine's Day, so I thought I would read a love poem. And it is, it kind of pokes fun a little bit how I'm still actually, I have two boys who are now teens and tweens. I think when I first started coming to Palm Beach, they were infants, and toddlers walking around, but they now can beat me at chess. I've never quite been able to figure this game out, and I want to so much, but this is called Chess, in the spirit of Valentine's Day coming up. Chess. Exactly 4 different men have tried to teach me how to play. I could never tell the difference between a rook and bishop, but I knew the horse meant knight. And that made sense to me, because a horse is night. Soot hoof and nostril, dark as a sabled evening with no stars, bats, or moon blooms. It's a night in Ohio where a man sleeps alone one week, and the next, the woman he will eventually marry leans her body into his for the first time. Leans a kind of faith, too, filled with white crickets and bouquets of wild carrot. And the months and the honeyed years after that will make all the light and dark squares feel like tiles for a kitchen they can one day build together. Every turn, every sacrificial move, all the decoys, the castling, the deflections, these will be both riotous and unruly, the exact opposite of what she thought she ever wanted in the end game of her days. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to do a little bit of a multimedia thing. This is one of my favorite Prince songs, and it's not, let me see, it is not often used or, hang on one moment. It's not often shown or, close this out, talked about, but it's a weird little song called Starfish and Coffee. And I think a lot of people don't realize Prince was on Sesame Street. And it's a very strange song to be paired with Muppets. I think maybe most songs would be strange to pair with Muppets, but coming from Prince, I just thought I would share this with you because it always puts me in a good mood. Here's just a snippet. We're not going to watch the whole thing of Starfish and Coffee.
It was 7:45 all night to preach teacher Miss Cathleen. First was Kevin, then came Lucy, third in line was me. All of us were ordinary compared to Cynthia Rose. She always stood in back of the line, a smile beneath her nose. Her favorite number was 20, and every every single day. If you ask what she had for breakfast, this is what she'd say. Starfish and coffee, maple syrup and jam, butterscotch clouds and tangerine, 'cause I had all of a ham. If you set your mind free, baby, maybe you'll understand. Starfish and coffee, maple syrup and jam.
Okay, I'm gonna pause for just a minute here. Yeah, I had to, I can't, I could never sing that song. And I just thought, we're in a pandemic. If Prince can make you smile while he talks about a side order of ham dancing with the Muppets, I thought, why not share that with you? A few years ago, I was asked to write a song to celebrate Prince, and it had to be based off of his songs. And of course, you can imagine people were doing his kind of classics, Purple Rain and Little Red Corvette. I chose Starfish and Coffee, and that's the title of this poem. Prince knows the sexiest meal of the day is breakfast. The meal that separates the sexy from the selfish after a night so wild, the fitted sheets slough halfway off the bed like Valella jellyfish. The blue sail left on the shore after a riotous night. And that's how you feel after tumbling like sea stars on the ocean floor over each other. And a night where it doesn't matter which are arms or which are legs or what radiates and how, only your centers stuck together. Underwater volcanoes send up pillow lava, and after a night like that, you rest your head on the pillow lava, caring not about the burn, but just the startle of falling asleep with his lip inside yours. All the shifts and small adjustments with this fish bright and beautiful body, a nightstand knocked clean of its clock. What care and flair goes into the person who rises after a night like that to mix flour, sugar, eggs, and oil, who puts on a pot of hickory coffee, a fine butter dish, a vial of syrup on the table, and then goes back to the bed where you lie, cheeks still rosy, one hand still clutching a fistful of pillow, hair tentacled over the side of the bed, your three hearts, so full, so hungry, so purple. I'm switching to some new poems. Those were from a collection of mine called Oceanic, and I'm going to switch to some new poems here. Over the pandemic, since the pandemic started, my parents got their first iPhones, and which has been a blessing mostly. But my father likes to kind of, I don't know how to put it, I guess just give me, it's the equivalent all through college and all through grad school. They would cut out little articles from the paper. It was so sweet. I loved it so much. And then send them to me like, either science articles or just little warnings, things like that. Now I'm getting them all, but they're on text. And they also figured out emojis. So that has been very interesting as well. This just kind of was a riff off one of the numerous warnings that he sends to me as he's going on his daily walk there in Florida. He lives in Central Florida. This is called Blood Flower. Sometimes my gentle father texts me warnings or jokes or waterbird photos from his walk around the lake in Central Florida. Once my father texted me what to do if an elephant charges me. You just gotta watch its ears, Aimee. If they are pinned back, apparently you have just seconds before it attacks. And just last week, my father sent me tips on how to survive a python bite. Throw mouthwash on its face or stab it with a saw. Neither of which I carry on my person. I live in Mississippi. I was more afraid of people when I lived in New York than anyone here. How they used to smile and ask you to sign a guest book, but then stared and followed you while you browsed the paintings. They start to approach you if you stand in front of one painting too long, their surveillance like being stabbed with a pen on the way out of the museum. I cannot figure out how to make my tongue loll the way the locals I love here say oil, and I can't figure out the red burst of a flower my gentle neighbor grows in a ceramic pot on her porch, and she has long forgotten the name of it, so I look it up. The stain of it, the rain of it, its name lives inside of me, inside of you too. This poem is called Nursery. In high school, boys hardly ever noticed me, and when they did, I could not imagine any of them a father. One called me the N-word when I was 7 years old. I needed a restraining order from another. It still seems a surprise I ever had an occasion to set up a nursery of my own with a grown man. When I found out a boy kicked inside of me, a bright panic perfumed me, and to be honest, it's never left. I know almost nothing of boys, but their father taught me a boy can grow to be a gentle man, who was also a gentle boy. If you look around, there's plenty of gentle to celebrate. A male Darwin frog keeps a nursery in his own mouth. Babies leap from his vocal sac, a reverse gobble drool, and such a trust he won't fever for a bite, and he never does, when they jump to a bog breakfast of wings. The male seahorse carries a dark swell in his brood pouch until he throws a parade ending with a confetti of gallops. Scientists still don't know where whale sharks give birth. I wish we'd keep some secrets underwater. I don't want us to ever find a nursery of those gentle giants. Let them swim out and grow into school bus-sized fish. Praise some still unsolved equations and maps of unspooled, unfurled tentacles solving for X, where X means you fall in love just when you think you won't ever, and Y means a mystery of shrimp scuttling for cover when you dove deeper than you ever thought you could. Yesterday, I was able to meet with so many high school students and their teachers, and I loved it. One of the questions that actually didn't come up, so I was kind of relieved and maybe a little bit sad, because it's usually my number one question from high school students, is not anything to do necessarily with the craft of poetry, but it's a question that I decided to turn into the title of this poem. And it's called, Are all the breakups in your poems real? If by real, you mean as real as a shark tooth stuck in your heel, the wetness of a finished lollipop stick, the surprise of a thumbtack in your purse, then yes, every last page is true, every nuance, bit, and bite. Wait, I have made them up, all of them. And when I say I am married, it means I married all of them, a whole neighborhood of past loves. Can you imagine the number of bouquets? How many slices of cake? Even now, my husbands plan a great meal for us. One chops up some parsley, one stirs a bubbling pot on the stove, one changes the baby, one sleeps in a fat chair. One flips through the newspaper, another whistles while he shaves in the shower, and every single one of them wonders just what time I'm coming home. We are, the grocery stores here in Mississippi, I think a lot of people think of Mississippi as, the deep South, and it is, but I'm in northern Mississippi, and they're predicting what my neighbors are calling snowpocalypse. it's only 2 inches of snow. And I say that not to make light of it, but I lived in Buffalo, New York, before I lived in Mississippi. So we're used to snow. And our grocery stores are pretty empty right now because of everyone's getting, the bread and milk. So just so you know what's going on in North Mississippi right now. It's almost Pinkelton time. My sister and I are sick of scarves, boot, and shovel. We cannot stomach another crock-pot stew. We prepare for the burst of spring in our garden, the first shoots of crocus through the snow. Pinkeltinks signal the way. The small promise of green bud and light slit into our room a little earlier each morning. I love to think of these frogs in winter, hunkered down in a knot hole, a sort of antifreeze sloshed through their tiny veins. Everything slows in their sleep, but they have faith they will emerge from their torpor, singing, the way I have faith in a single snapdragon seed, the way I hope the flat green of his eyes will be the last color I ever see on this earth. I too will wait for spring like these frogs, no heat or thirst while they sleep, only the odd and occasional shift of leg, and once in a while, a small pulse. And I can't talk about frogs in Mississippi without talking about brown pelicans in Florida. And this is called Brown Pelican. My favorite afternoon emergency is an emergency of pelicans. When the shore sizzles too hot to walk barefoot, I scan the horizon for these goofy birds, their yellow neck scruff half hidden when they twist their head onto their own shoulders for a nap. I love how they fly so solidly in one direction, but when the dazzle of a grass minnow catches their eye, how they can zip shift on a dime. How they can plunge head first over 60 feet from the air in a plash gobble to swallow anything their throat pouch can hold. In the 60s, brown pelicans ate menhaden fish, sopped with so much DDT, their eggshells grew too thin and crushed under the weight of their feathered parent. What a gulp and cry you'd hear then. Their gular skin trembles, joins their lower neck to their beak, lets their famous pouch hold almost 3 whole gallons of gulf, and perhaps every heart sound you've ever claimed to seek. The short ones here. Bodies in the air. If you want to talk, say the word, hummingbird. I just want to know when you will flick flack from crepe myrtle or beautyberry bush. In Morocco's Erd-Chebi desert, spiders cartwheel down sand dunes. And how can you not smile when you learn there's an ant called Graminecola that somersaults in the forest? Splash tetras leap from the river onto leaves fin-stuck, just long enough for eggs to grow and swell into a very fine fry. Salamanders backflip over the face of a rock to avoid birds, whip their tails up and over, throw their long backs till their tiny forelegs reach for the clouds. So when you finally speak this into the air and let it leap off a branch, remember it's the only thing I ever wanted from you. I want to see your words in the air. Watch them be the only thing on this big blue planet that can fly backwards, even upside down. This is a small little ode to capiz shells, which is one of the biggest, I think now, exports of the Philippines. If you ever have any kind of home decor that has kind of that shimmery inside of a shell that's usually white or off-white. That's a capiche shell. So my childhood houses were filled with capiche shell ornaments, capiche shell chandeliers, capiche shell boxes and picture frames, and peacocks to honor my mother's side of the family, and then peacocks for the Indian side of my family. So it was a very kind of strange interior that I now love. I think back when I was a little embarrassed of how shiny and how much birds there were all over our house. This is Ode to Capiche Shells. Window pane oysters bounce us glimmer glimmer and luster lamplight into moonlight on our walls. Since I was a little girl, I believed heaven was made of it. Every window, chair, and open shimmered door. I'm gonna switch gears, bring back another little video. Oops. Sorry, Prince, we have to go. All right, I'm going to share with you a little bit. A few years ago, I think it's been a lot of years now, Morgan Freeman narrated a documentary that won Oscars and won all kinds of awards called March of the Penguins. And one of the images that kind of the indelible images from that was just watching emperor penguins wait and wait and wait and wait for their mates to come back. And I just thought there was something so haunting about that. At the bottom of the planet, this was going on. And I had never, I think before then we'd seen footage of it from different nature shows, but I think that was the first documentary that used drone footage. It was so extraordinary. So this is just a little snip of how emperor penguins wait in the darkest parts of winter.
All converge on the same central point until a huddle begins to form. Each penguin must find a place to tuck in. But by speeding up the action, it's clear that something more organized is going on.
Okay, I better stop there, otherwise my friends know I could be watching penguins all day. But I just thought that was so moving to see how this group of penguins just kind of keeps each other warm, this collective kind of like doing your part for the greater good. And there was one penguin in particular that the documentary focused on, if you remember, that just kind of was solitary a little bit away. He also did his time in the huddle, the group penguin huddle. But the camera just fixated on this one penguin in particular. And I decided to write a Valentine about that penguin. This is called Penguin Valentine. Praise the patience of a papa penguin. I don't envy those dark, starlit nights with only the occasional blush green current of auroras across his claws. See how sweetly he holds the egg close in his brood pouch? And I am certain his fierce tenderness would scare even a crab-eater seal 5 times his size. What exactly does the papa penguin register in a nighttime that lasts 2 whole months? During those days of no sun, does he remember the particular bend of his mate's neck, that hint of yellow near her ears? Or does he hunger for a slip of hooked squid, worry the grand gulp of air he must take, the concentration needed to slow down his own heart? Praise the faithfulness, the resolve, the lanceolate feathers shaped like tiny spears, perfect to poke through a cartoon heart and signal Valentine. And Valentine, I sing your praises, not because I know you'll wait for me like that, though I know you would if you could. but because you never waver. I don't know how you know what direction to look and how to listen for my return, even when my call boils from the floor of the darkest of Arctic seas. Even if, for now, all we can feel is a cast of red crabs stretching and stretching before our path. And let me see, I'm gonna check the time. I'm just gonna read two more. Sorry. Zoom technology is so great. You can hear every page turn. All right. Okay, just to go on with the almost Valentine's Day theme. This is called When I'm Away From You, I Feel Like the Second Place Winner in a Bee Wearing Contest. And just so you know, maybe someone can find it and put it in the chat. There's people who have contests on how many bees you can wear. I feel like when I don't mention this and you haven't heard of this concept before, people are thinking either the letter B or I'm trying to be have a nickname for something. No, I mean, there's people actually all around the planet who have a hobby of just testing how many bees they could wear. Sometimes they make it into a beard. Sometimes it's like pants. It's a whole thing. So yeah, anyway. So I'm always wondering what happened to the person who places second in that contest. All right, when I'm away from you, I feel like the second place winner in a bee wearing contest. Oh, thank you, David. Thank you for posting that in the chat. When I'm away from you, I feel like the second place winner in a bee wearing contest who practiced all year only to lose to a guy whose every inch was covered in hum. And I am in awe to learn one cheeky bee clambered into the winner's sugared ear, another slid into his nostril, and still he didn't flip. He just calmly waited for the bell to signal victory. But even 57 pounds of bees can't stop the music I hear when I return to you, the music I hear when you walk near me, like I'm always carried in enough good sting and thrum to remember our life. I'll always return home to you, my honeycomb, my sweet, my one faithful and true buzz. Let me see, I'm seeing chat. In the chat, people are, yeah, there's, oh my gosh, you got to watch these bee wearing things. I know now I'm kind of torn. I want to have you switch over to it, but maybe just save those, bookmark those, and then you can watch them after. I've got one more poem and then we'll wrap it up, folks. Thank you so, so much. This has been so amazing to be with you here. This is one, I've been reading, this is poetry, so I'm not going to read what I've been recently working on, but I have been doing food writing kind of during the pandemic, just writing about individual ingredients here and there, like mint, figs, chocolate. I've always loved food writing and reading about food. This is from my very first book, as Angela can attest to. And one of the last poems in this was about how the culinary powers that be divide up spices. And they're divided, spices are divided into 3 different categories. And you'll see these as the subheadings here: coloring, fragrance, and heat. So every spice in the world can be divided into one of those 3 categories. And I just wanted to kind of riff on each main category and see what would happen. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. So I love that kind of, I always tell my students, no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader. I thought I was only going to be writing about spices itself, and then it kind of went in a different place. So this is called Spices. Coloring. If your man doesn't know cumin from cardamom, man, it's time to let him go. But if he discovers a wetted paintbrush dipped into turmeric makes a soft yellow line on your back and spells something like, "You are my son," then keep him, girl, and hold on tight. I'd like a cupboard packed with jam jars rubbed clean, full of the sand from fantasy beaches of me and my man, and a paintbrush I conjured up just last night. A cupboard where the difference in reds means danger or victory for my pot of stew. Fragrance. And what about cloves pierced into a fat orange, strung up with ribbon at Christmas? Who came up with that, and what kind of twisted need did they have for the occasional prick of spikes under nails? Once, when we were leaving the restaurant Bombay Palace, my father spooned caraway and licorice bits into my palm from the jade bowl on the counter and said, "This will clean your breath." The owner twitched his mustache and simply nodded. Heat. Pepper is the obvious choice in its powdered form, but there's something about the crush of peppercorns into a salad over pasta, the twist and flex of wrist that sends men back for more. But if you really want to impress, try chili flaked fresh under a rolling pin and wax paper. Make sure he sees you doing this labor of love. Act as if you do this at every meal, that this is how it would be every day if he desired. And after dinner, float some in his tea, slip some into his slice of cake. Be careful for the warmth of his mouth. Thank you so, so much.